Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Light Season offense matches. Zelgius wound up being lucky enough to get a third bonus week, and I was only too happy to take advantage of it. The team is identical to the previous Light Season and goes all in on giving Zelgius a very functional speed stat. He can reliably reach 65 combat speed in this setup without being close enough for the Dancer's guidance skills to kick in, which might seem too low to be useful, at least until all of the team's penalties start adding up. Between Savvy Fighter, Penalty Doubler, Milla's Sabotage, and Triandra's Dance and Weapon, he can cut down up to 30 of his opponent's speed, bringing him to an effective total of 95, which is more than enough to take full advantage of Savvy Fighter and quad his opponents off the battlefield. Together with his weapon's built-in damage reduction and Lightless Luna offering unpierceable mitigation, he becomes very difficult to bring down, especially with Gatekeeper doubling up his post-combat healing from across the map. The rest of the team is tailored to support Zelgius. While it isn't an optimal setup since it requires him to get in combat before Prime comes fully online, they still do a great job of enabling his speed stacking approach. Having access to penalty neutralization and an extra layer of dodge, bringing him up to a potential total of 74% passive damage reduction, helps give Zelgius an even greater edge on the front line, while Gatekeeper stops opponents from sneaking into the backline with warp effects. Milla's isolation is a great way to control enemy assist skills, and the combination of Ash with 2 sources of Guidance 4 offers the team an incredible amount of mobility, letting the squad navigate maps with minimal difficulty. Now that we've gone over the team, let's get to the first match. This match was a pretty intimidating setup to see at first. Using Note's Pathfinder to help synchronize the threat ranges of Micaiah, Shamir, and Ganunkagap can make them very difficult to tank through, especially with Erica's Rally Trap helping to launch her into the fight with them. Having 2 Dancers makes it a lot harder to fully isolate the setup, and the traps do a good job of stifling hit-and-run approaches. The extended ranges of the cavalry also make it tricky to navigate the map safely, cutting down the number of safe spaces for support units to hide in. There is a bit of a problem with the layout though. While Pathfinder does improve their threat range, it also extends it beyond the range of the penalties from Guinea's Ruler of Nihility and Shamir's weapon, which is a flaw we are planning to exploit here. By planting Zelgius in Note's column all the way at the bottom, we're in range of all 3 of these cavalry units, and after the first combat, he'll have Prime fully online to take out the remaining 2.
I'll follow through.
At least after our safety fence kicks in when we don't want it to, and we start the fight next turn. While the first attack is going to get in the way of the following 2 cavalry attacks, Note also has Draw Back, which will let her pull that first cavalry back out of the way and open that space up for the remaining cavalry to attack into Zelgius and get themselves knocked out. We start with a dance here. I isolated Erica's column specifically to make sure that she wouldn't rally forwards and potentially get danced by Plumeria to get all the way into our backline. Guinea does attack first, which means we don't have any healing to work with for the rest of this round, but when the +10 Micaiah moves in and only does damage thanks to the exposure from Plumeria, it's not looking very good for the rest of their combat this turn. And it is very funny to see Zelgius quadding a Shamir. Nothing else can reach us here, thanks to the isolation. So, now we just need to make sure that we take out Ganunkagap and set up for the rest of their team. Moving Ash over meant that Zelgius can just warp in to attack her without needing any other movement options. And then we can dance him, and have him step forward onto the Hex Trap to take out Note. He has enough health to be able to ignore it, so we don't have to worry about our turn getting ended early. And dancing Ash also sabotages their entire team, which should make it a lot easier for Zelgius to handle them this turn. I do move Milla forwards here. I don't want to finish the match this turn, and I wasn't sure if Zelgius would be able to bait out both of their dancers. He didn't actually get hit by exposure here, so I wouldn't have had to worry about it as much. The rally means that someone is going to survive this turn. And while Erica, without penalties, could double Zelgius, she can't survive his 1-2 punch hit. And, well, Plumeria is not really going to get anything done here. And now that their team is down to just Triandra, it's a lot easier for us to navigate through this to close things out. Smiting Zelgius onto the Bolt Trap might not have been completely necessary, but Triandra's never going to actually threaten him. So all we have to do is let him be the bait, by making sure he doesn't actually get enough bonuses to have distant counter online, and move Gatekeeper in on the side to help block her off. And after a generous donation of help from that combat with Triandra, we can move in to pick off both of these Aether pots and close out the match.
Reporting for duty.
Truly?
It will be done.
I'll follow through.
Maybe this way.
Where to today?
To where?
Acknowledged. Without mercy.
This match was another fun one to run into. It's a much more open field to work with, relying on their front line of traps and structures to shut down safe defense turns and give their ranged threats plenty of room to move in. Unity might not be the best pick for the maxed out Chrom, his weapon neutralizes penalties, but he is still a particularly threatening part of the team. The combination of a formation bonus from his Oath skill to change fate and 2 dancers can give him access to just about any corner of the map, letting him find easy knockouts on unprepared targets. Windy Claude and Ninja Sanaki aren't what I would call backup threats either. They're both very capable of demolishing any tank that gets in their way, especially with Embla shutting down their support options.
Good morning.
This ended up being a tricky puzzle to solve, though not because Zelgius would have a hard time surviving the barrage, especially after he takes out Claude in the player phase here. The real problem is making sure he doesn't wipe out the entire enemy team before we get to these Aether pods. And after Gatekeeper pulls Peony to safety, we're going to do that by having Milla bait out Sanaki. Using Triandra to sabotage Sanaki's res means that she doesn't quite have enough res to ploy Milla here. And without having that, she can't really do any damage to Milla, only getting the 7 true damage from Flared Mirror. She could technically do more damage to Zelgius. Zelgius did get hit with this ploy, but Zelgius would also knock her out on the counterattack. And while Chrom can double Zelgius and get a chunk of damage done,
Without mercy.
he doesn't get a chance to launch that second attack, so penalty neutralization doesn't do enough for him. Or Embla. And at this point, all Zelgius has to worry about is the 10 true damage from exposure, and that's never going to be enough to wear him down. It also means that he gets to take out both of their dancers.
Such is war.
And leave Sanaki completely stranded for the remaining turn. Things get a lot more straightforward from here. I was careful to set things up so that Sanaki would end up moving into this tile above the lake to attack,
Lord, ask her guide us.
which makes it very easy for us to box her in and stop her from making it hard for us to reach these Aether pots before we close things out.
Greetings.
A little bit of dancing and working means that Gatekeeper can secure a first pot, and then we can grab the second one here and let Zelgius close things out.
Truly?
Reporting for duty. I'll follow through.
Ready.
Direct me. Prepare to bleed.
This map was a neat setup to see. While their formation is a bit boxed in, it's still a tricky squad to handle. The Flared Sparrow, Fatal Smoke, Poison Strike Sigurd is not a unit you want to have attacking your tank, especially with his weapon preventing counterattacks from most opponents. The extra movement he gives his allies with this special can make the map a lot more dangerous than it seems at first too, especially with the maxed out Spiral 4 Byleth backing him up. I also appreciated this plus 10 Gambit Miracle Hell. It's a very effective combo, and it's easy for her to sneak out of the limited starting area with her warps to catch an unsuspecting unit off guard. I decided to take a turn to set things up for this one. While Zelgius could have baited things out immediately, I wanted to avoid letting Sigurd attack him if possible. So, after we open things up on the left, we just need to navigate back out of Sigurd's attack range, and wait to start things off next turn.
Acknowledged.
Truly?
Greetings.
I bestow my blessing.
From here, moving Zelgius forward means that Triandra can dance him and Kanto forward again, which lets Zelgius use Guidance 4 to warp all the way forward and take out Sigurd before he can cause us problems. Triandra is still in a bit of danger here, so we need to pull her down with Gatekeeper,
It will be done.
and then smiting her over means that her weapon applies to the entire combat area that Zelgius is going to be working in. Peony can bring Prime fully online from across the map, and we can say go. I was very careful setting this up to make sure that we didn't hit Hell with Triandra's Sabotage dance.
I will triumph.
Because we didn't apply that, Hell is fast enough to avoid getting quadded by Zelgius, which means we are going to end up leaving somebody alive while we go and pick up the Aether pods. Kvasir does manage to outspeed Zelgius,
I will triumph.
but when she has an effective 0 defense, even 70% damage reduction is just not going to be enough to save her.
For a new tomorrow.
And it is a bit awkward when over half of Byleth's damage output here is coming from the true damage from Plumeria's Ploy. Schmear also gets to double here. It's a bit unfortunate to not be able to apply Sabotage to the right side of the map, because we needed Hell to stay alive, but it's not like Zelgius is having problems anyway.
Prepare to bleed.
And then we get to finish the turn by quadding down Tiki. Not that he really needs the quads. From here, things are still a little tricky. Hell is not somebody I want to let reach any of our support units, outside of Gatekeeper,
Like this.
but thankfully Gatekeeper does a very good job of stopping her from reaching anyone that we don't want her to. And, with a bit of warping, we can have Mila pick up our first Aether pot, give Gatekeeper the best combat he can hope for, and let him tank Hell for a turn. She does get a lot of true damage here, but Gatekeeper has true damage reduction of his own to help him mitigate that and keep it to a
Truly?
pretty reasonable combat.
To where?
From here, using Ashe and dancing her forwards means that Gatekeeper can secure a second Aether pot, and while I could have just attacked Hell
I
twice
bestow
here,
my blessing.
Ready.
I did find a way to let Zelgius just quad her outright in the player phase, so we went with that option instead,
Such is war.
and let him close out the match with that.
Prepare to bleed.
This match was a really fun way to close out the week. It's a tricky setup to navigate. Kvasir and Gnungagap are a dangerous pair of threats who cover the left half of the map, while the other side is guarded by the first maxed-out Brave Soren I've seen in the wild. Soren also turns their Zelgius into a near-safe bodyguard after the first turn, making it much harder to attack into the team than it looks at first. The +10 Ninian behind him is someone to take seriously too. Her ability to self-refresh when she dances can let her demolish an unprepared frontliner, and the combination of Blue Feud and preventing counterattacks makes her particularly annoying for Zelgius. Together with the penalties coming from Guinea, Yune, and Embla, it is not a map that you'd usually want to try to tank. Which, of course, is exactly how we're planning to approach it. We can actually find our way in a similar way to some of the other maps we've seen this week. By dancing Zelgius and using guidance to warp in, he can ignore the Hex trap and take out Soren before he becomes a problem. From there, we can have Gatekeeper get danced, sabotaging 4 of their remaining threats, then use guidance to pull Peony into a safer place,
Truly?
and watch the enemy turn play out. This is not exactly the best situation for Zelgius to be in. He does get hit with Guinea's debuffs, which means he's not going to be able to counterattack anything this turn, and after Guinea attacks him, he won't be able to heal either. So he's just going to have to sit and tank all of these attacks before we can do anything else. Ninian can get some damage done here, and then Kanto's out of the way to let their Zelgius take a shot too. The Lightless Luna does do some, but thankfully it gets pretty heavily blunted by all of our Zelgius' damage reduction, and thanks to the Sabotage, Kvasir can't really get much done here. Yune and Embla can't reach us, and Yune very helpfully opens up that crumbling wall for her coming turn. Makes it a little bit easier to find a creative way to handle the rest of this. By repositioning Peony forwards, Zelgius can warp all the way over to start by taking out Embla. From there, we can dance him with Peony, which is going to let him teleport back over this tactic room to take out Guinea. We also need to dance Gatekeeper to make sure he gets out of the way of Kvasir, and taking out Gnungagap here means that Zelgius will be able to heal his way through this coming turn, which is important, since he's already missing 30 health. And from here, now that our team is out of the way, we can let Zelgius start tanking his way through things more realistically. Ninian still gets to attack for free, and that means she's the first one to attack him, but now that he's healing, she doesn't get quite as much damage to stick. Kvasir is still not doing anything. And while she isn't getting quadded here, it's a speed tie, which is not a good place for her to be. Yune can't get much done here, since most of her weapon relies on having penalties to exploit, and thanks to Peony, Zelgius doesn't have any of those in combat. And then he gets to close things out by taking down his alter ego.
Without mercy.
From here, while this is the last match of the week, I do still want to reach these Aether pots to close things out cleanly, and Ninian does present a bit of a problem for us with that. The combination of being able to do damage to Zelgius and Kanto means that it's difficult to keep her locked in place, and I don't want her attacking anyone other than Zelgius, since I'm pretty sure she would be able to take them out.
Like this.
Thankfully, we can secure the first Aether pot there,
Your gaze
and
is
while
harsh.
Begnion does a lot more damage when we can't get a sabotage in on her, it's still not enough to take Zelgius down. Which means that we can move in for the second Aether pot this turn, and then let Zelgius close out the match.
Ready.
Acknowledged.
Going.
Where to today? I'll follow through. Such is war.
The end of the week ended up being a really fun time to close out Zelgius' bonus seasons, even if a bit of unfortunate timing on defenses ended up keeping him from a rank 1 finish. It's been really neat to explore just how far speed can be pushed on an offense team, and I'll definitely be keeping Zelgius around for future seasons. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat, there's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.